Every day on this channel, I cover everything Elon said on X in the last 24 hours. And here's how many times Elon posted about each subject today. I'll cover everything he said about each topic before moving on to the next one. And as always, we will start with our technology-related topics, beginning with Tesla. The Wall Street Journal said the first time I let the vehicle take control, something shifted. As the car guided itself through traffic, I felt tension melt away. It's a little teaser for their article on Tesla's full self-driving. Elon said, accurate. And Lars Morvey said, fun fact, Tesla is the most reliable EV you can buy according to Consumer Reports, and we continue to improve year over year. Elon said to try Tesla self-driving. It's a game changer. And Tesla owner Silicon Valley shared the Tesla Robovan, calling it CGI in real life, and Elon reposted this. And we've seen this clip several times over the last few days. Jensen talking about how excited he is for the robots Elon's working on, and he predicts it's still a few years away. And Elon reposted this again today. And moving on to SpaceX, here are all of the Starship launches from 2019 until now, and Elon reposted this. And Florida is quietly becoming the launch pad of a multi-planet civilization. The company is now constructing 2 new Starship launch pads at Cape Canaveral Space Launch Complex 37, each designed to withstand the absurd building-shaking force of the Super Heavy booster's 16 to 17 million pounds of thrust. For comparison, NASA's Space Launch System, the most powerful rocket ever built, clocks in at 8.8 million. Starship casually doubles it. We're watching the foundation of a multi-planet species being poured in concrete, steel, and flame trenches in real time, and it's only the beginning. And Elon reposted that. And breaking news that 5 Korean airlines will add Starlink across all fleets, a first in Korea. Installations begin this year with earliest service expected in Q3 of 2026 and full rollout targeted by 2027. Starlink use is growing exponentially across airlines, and Elon reposted this. And Falcon 9 launched 28 Starlink satellites from California today. And Elon said that Starlink is not allowing him to operate in South Africa because he's not black. Elon said, yup. And Neuralink is working on tech to give sight to people born blind, to restore hearing for the deaf, to help those with spine injuries walk again, to let paralyzed people control devices with thoughts, and help amputees use advanced robotic limbs. Here's how the implant is done.
Couple different steps, but first we have a surgeon, human neurosurgeon, which hopefully the robot will do this portion of it as well. But at the moment, we have a human neurosurgeon that exposes the brain. So they drill a 25 millimeter hole in the skull and then expose the brain. And then the robot has this tiny needle. It's about the size of red blood cells, so really, really tiny, thinner than a human hair, inside this cannula. And this cannula is actuated by precision motors on the robot to engage with this thread loop to grasp it, and then you insert it into the brain 128 times. There's a total of 8 electrodes per thread, so total of 1,000 channels, and this is done while avoiding vasculature. And then once all the threads are inserted, implant basically replaces this hole, and then you put the skin flap over, everything is invisible.
And Elon reposted that. And 4 years ago, a monkey played Mind Pong with Neuralink. And this year, in 2025, a paralyzed man fed himself with a robotic arm using Neuralink. If this is 4 years of progress, imagine the next 10 with Neuralink. Danish quoted that he works at Neuralink, and he said that people tend to overestimate what they can do in 4 months and underestimate what they can do in 4 years. Our engineering team is focused on how to scale and improve the product as soon as humanly possible, but I also can't stop myself from dreaming about what's possible in 2029. Elon said, true. And moving on to XAI, Claude is now pulling from Grokipedia voluntarily. Safe to say Wikipedia's days are now numbered. Elon said, cool. And XAI's Grok models dominate the Open Router leaderboard with over 8.8 trillion tokens in usage in a month, claiming top number 1 and number 2 spots. This is more than Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI combined, which total 8.6 trillion, less than Grok's 8.8 trillion. XAI alone holds 44% market share. Elon quoted that saying, Grok. Doge designer calls it complete domination, and Elon reposted this. He also reposted that Grok ranks number 1 on the language model arena text arena. With a 1483 ELO in thinking mode, it's a whopping 31-point lead over the next best non-XAI model. And Grok ranks number 1 across many major AI coding platforms, with multi-trillion token usage and the biggest lead over rival models in real-world developer traffic. And Elon reposted that. And Dogen says next level user interface from Grok, instant answers without hitting enter. As you type, suggestions come up. Elon said Grok. And Wes Roth says, holy crap, this mystery AI model might crash the stock market. It took some digging, but I figured out what this model is, and it's not what you think. Elon said the mystery AI model is an experimental version of Grok 420. Tesla Economics said so the experiment included taking money and investing it in the stock market, and it outperformed all other models. Elon said yes. And this XAI employee said it's a step towards reducing input. And Elon replied saying all input is error. Alright gang, moving on to a huge story today. You can see Henna Virkunen is the Executive Vice President for Tech Sovereignty, Security and Democracy of the European Commission. And she says today, we have issued a fine to X for breaching its transparency obligations under the Digital Services Act. The breaches concern the deceptive design of its blue checkmark, the lack of transparency in its ads repository, and the failure to provide access to public data for researchers. The fine is 120 million euros. Elon says, you love censorship more than life itself. Just admit it. Peter Sweden said it's real simple. The EU fined X 120 million euros because this is where the mainstream media narrative gets exposed. Elon said 100. Based Mike Lee quoted that saying, why is Europe trying to censor X? Millions of Europeans are finally getting red-pilled by reading actual unbiased news on X, instead of state-approved legacy media propaganda. So naturally, the European Commission is trying to kill X, because the truth is dangerous. And Elon reposted that. The European Commission also posted it with a video.
Today, the Commission has issued a fine of 120 million euro to X for breaching the Digital Services Act. This is the first ever fine under the DSA. X has indeed breached its transparency obligation under the DSA. This includes X's blue checkmark. It deceives users. Anyone can pay to obtain the verified status, and X does not meaningfully verify who is behind it. It also includes X advertising repository, which does not work properly, and X doesn't provide effective data access for researchers. Today's decision has nothing to do with content moderation. It's about transparency provisions for citizens here in the European Union.
Elon said, bullshit. Vittorio says, read, today we find X because it's jeopardizing our totalitarian regime. Elon said, exactly. JD Vance said, rumors swirling that the EU Commission will fine X hundreds of millions of dollars for not engaging in censorship. The EU should be supporting free speech, not attacking American companies over garbage. Barry Andrews said, fact-checked, Mr. Vice President. The digital EU investigation is not about censorship, but about X hiding its work from researchers and misleading us as users. Peter Haig said, no. Blue checks are not mislabels. Notice how as a government official you get a gray one. And the research the EU wants done is basically dragnet surveillance for wrongthink in order to maintain Europe's new managed democracy. Elon said precisely. He also quoted the vice president saying, much appreciated. And this is what he said about X on the Don Lemon show.
I acquired X in order to preserve freedom of speech in America, the First Amendment, and I'm going to stick to that. And if that means making less money, so be it.
Elon said, without freedom of speech, the West will fall. And here's another old interview of him talking about X on Fox News.
My timing is amazing, since I've bought it for at least twice as much as it should have been bought for. But some things are priceless, and so whether I lose money or not, that is a secondary issue compared to ensuring the strength of democracy, and free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy.
Yes.
And the speech needs to be as transparent and truthful as possible. So we've got a huge push on Twitter to be as truthful as possible. We've got this community notes feature, which is great. I thought there'd probably be some negative reactions, yes. So I'm sure everyone would not be pleased with it. But at the end of the day, you know, if the public is happy with it, that's what matters. and the public will speak with their actions. If they find Twitter to be useful, they will use it more, and if they find it to be not useful, they will use it less. If they find it to be the best source of truth, I think they will use it more.
And Elon reposted that. And Preston quoted J.D. Vance saying the Granite Act would allow X to sue the European Commission in U.S. federal court for 3 times this amount and get injunctive relief against the Commission's orders. Congress should enact it ASAP to head off this European censorship attempt. And Elon reposted that. Secretary Marco Rubio said the European Commission's $140 million fine isn't just an attack on X, it's an attack on all American tech platforms and the American people by foreign governments. The days of censoring Americans online are over. And Alice Vidal said the European Commission appreciates censorship and chat control of its citizens. They want to silence critical voices by restricting freedom of speech. That's what it's all about. Elon quoted that saying 100. And he also quoted Marco Rubio's statement saying, absolutely. Doge Designer says the European Commission offered X an illegal secret deal last year. If X quietly censored speech without telling anyone, they would not fine X. The other platforms accepted that deal. X did not. And Elon reposted this. Grums said total war on free speech. EU has been pumping out narrative after narrative and free speech keeps popping their fake bubble. The US must retaliate immediately and decisively to protect democracy and reject authoritarianism and return truth and power to the people of Europe. And Elon reposted that. Here's Americans watching Europeans get arrested for social media posts. The rabbit hole says Europe does not have free speech. It has moderated speech. Elon said it literally doesn't. Brendan Carr said once again, Europe is fining a successful U.S. tech company for being a successful U.S. tech company. Europe is taxing Americans to subsidize a continent held back by Europe's own suffocating regulations. And Elon reposted that. Grum said if the EU goes through with censoring X, the US should pull out of NATO and impose 100% tariffs immediately. Otherwise, the West will fall. Yes, X is that crucial. ADJ said pull out of NATO because X, a private company, is censored? I'm assuming this is satire. Grum said, I'm fully serious. There is no greater threat to the democratic West than EU censorship. Elon said, true. Elon said that freedom of speech is the bedrock democracy, the only way to know what you are voting for. And here's an old interview he did.
Yes, I think as a general rule, you can tell which side is the good side and which side is the bad side by which side wishes to restrict freedom of speech. The side that is restricting freedom of speech, that would have been sort of the Hitler, Stalin, Mussolinis of the world. They had very strong censorship, very strong restrictions on speech. That's one of the signs that they are the bad guys. And so, in fact, a restriction on speech and large government is fundamentally fascist, obviously. So, ironically, in pushing for censorship, it makes it very clear that the left is the side that is against freedom, and freedom of speech is simply one of many freedoms that we should have as a civil society, because ideas should win on the strength of their arguments. They should not win because they are suppressed.
Elon quoted that clip saying, yep. And an Italian politician says the fine imposed on X by Brussels is an attack on freedom of expression. With the Digital Services Act, which the League, and only the League, the only Italian party to vote against it in Europe, has always denounced as a weapon of censorship, the EU uses its rules to strike at those who give voice to those who think differently. No to the European gag law. Long live freedom. Always. And Elon reposted that. And in response to the announcement, Tim Sweeney said very strange. After prior Twitter leadership treated verification as a perk nominally reserved for the elite, but in practice handed out by Twitter employees to friends and cronies, Elon opened it up to everyone for a reasonable price. This was a good thing. Elon said, indeed, the goal was to democratize verification, rather than have it be controlled by a group of biased elites. And here's Elon again on free speech.
If you don't have freedom of speech, you don't have democracy. Okay, because if you don't have freedom of speech, people cannot make an informed vote. If they're just being fed propaganda and there's no freedom of speech, democracy is an illusion. So freedom of speech is the bedrock of democracy. That's why freedom of speech is the First Amendment. Once you lose freedom of speech, you lose democracy. Game over. That's why I bought Twitter.
Elon quoted that saying, yes. And X is now the #1 news app in several European countries. So Elon quoted that saying the EU woke Stasi commissars are about to understand the full meaning of the Streisand effect. And after Marco Rubio said that what's going on is an attack on all American tech platforms and the American people, Andrew Ferguson said Secretary Rubio is right. The EU not only wants to censor Americans, it's paying itself for the privilege. It's disgraceful. Censorship and the targeting of American companies by foreign governments needs to stop now, and Elon reposted it. Ted Cruz says the European Commission's fine on X is an abomination. It's an attack on a great American job creator, and it's an attack on the free speech of every American. Trump should impose sanctions until this travesty is reversed. Elon said the EU imposed this crazy fine not just on X, but also on me personally, which is even more insane. Therefore, it would seem appropriate to apply our response not just to the EU, but also to the individuals who took this action against me. And Michael Schellenberger responded to Henna Virkunen's statement saying, stop spreading disinformation and stop demanding censorship. Stop killing free speech and democracy. Grow up and learn to tolerate different opinions. Elon said 100. Eva said, all I want for Christmas is to abolish the European Union. Elon replied with a Christmas tree. X Freeze said we should be thanking Elon for single-handedly saving free speech and giving us a real voice and freedom. Think about it. There's no way anyone else could have done what he did, putting humanity first and paying the highest price. After Elon bought Twitter, he cast light on the corrupt minds pulling the strings, exposed massive fraud, and revealed extreme censorship. Elon saved democracy, at least the last bit of what's left before it was too late. And the result is the EU just fined him a lot of money and targeted X alone. Other platforms caved in to save themselves from the financial hit and get off the hook. Elon replied with a heart. Let's see what JD Vance has to say to the EU.
But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
So JD basically said the greatest threat to Europe is Europe itself. Do you agree with JD Vance? Elon says yes. European civilization could disappear within the next 20 years if the continent fails to overcome its political divisions and reform its migration and demographic policies. That's according to the newly released U.S. National Security Strategy published by the White House, as the total fertility rate in Europe is not looking good. Elon said it is happening before our eyes. And Peter Sweden posted the percentage of the population with a foreign background in the 3 largest Swedish cities. Stockholm 46%, Gothenburg 48%. Elon said, wow. And this is the moment that a judge in the Netherlands handed the migrant killer of a little girl just 120 hours community service as punishment. I won't show you guys the clip because it's actually quite startling, but after the judge announces just such a small penalty, the father of the victim, enraged, throws a chair at the judge. Judges like this should lose their jobs. It's absolutely disgusting beyond belief. Elon said incredibly unjust. And viewer discretion is advised. In one of Paris's biggest shopping malls, a 13-year-old girl went to the toilet at KFC. She was followed by 4 men who locked her in and raped her, filming everything. Dries said, I would bet my life on what group these 4 men belong to, but if I say which group, I will face a higher prison sentence than these animals. Elon replied with 2 exclamation marks. And Maine police list black Somali Muslim as white on court documents. Elon said, weird. And there's reports that Minnesota's Somali fraud may reach $8 billion, not just $1 billion as first reported. Elon said, wow. Joel Berry said, if the welfare fraud in Minnesota is this bad, imagine how bad the voter fraud is. Elon said, true. And Gad Saad announces that he's hosting an X Space to talk about Somalia and Richard Gere's rectal lobotomy. Elon has a laugh at that one. And again, viewer discretion is advised. Someone was raped to death on church steps after Nashville freed her Somali predator 16 times. And unfortunately, the victim passed away, a 34-year-old woman. Elon said, this is horrific. Robbie said, bring back public executions for monsters like this. It's the only way if you want a high-trust society. Elon said yes. And Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar introduced the bill that allowed the $250 million welfare fraud scheme to happen in her district. She held parties at core fraud sites and had a top staffer convicted of stealing $1.1 million from the program, but she claims she knew nothing. Drew said Omar's own staffer stole over $1 million as part of a Somali fraud ring. This should be grounds for her resignation from Congress. What a disgrace. Elon said, wow. And Tim Walz is the governor of Minnesota, and he says that people are driving by his house calling him retarded.
True. This creates danger. And I'll tell you what, in my time on this, I'd never seen this before. People driving by my house and using the R word in front of people. This is shameful. And I have yet to see an elected official, a Republican elected official, say, you're right, that's shameful. He should not say it. So look, I'm worried. We know how these things go. They start with taunts, they turn to violence. So deeply concerned.
Donald Trump Jr. says the people calling him retarded are not wrong. And Elon has a laugh at that one. And here's the mayor of Minneapolis.
What you see is a visual representation of we have your back, and when you come for one of us, you come for all of us. We reject the hateful rhetoric of Donald Trump.
Rapid Response calls him a total cuck. On the illegal alien Somali gang members, sex predators, and other criminals taken off the streets of Minneapolis over just the past few days, he said, when you come for one of us, you come for all of us. What is wrong with these sick Democrats? Mario says the White House just called a mayor a cuck, not a parody account, not a meme page. The actual White House Rapid Response team. We really are living in the most entertaining timeline. Elon said, accurate. He's an utter cuck. Ted Cruz says Omar is viciously. Elon said she has repeatedly expressed her traitorous loyalty to Somalia over America. And Fox News reports that new details have emerged connecting Ilhan Omar to individuals involved in a massive fraud scheme in Minnesota. And James Woods said impeach her and let the facts fall where they may. Elon said yes. And in this video, Somalians gang up to attack a white student. Elon replied to it with 2 exclamation marks. And yesterday, Trump basically said that Somalians are garbage. So someone said, this is our garbage, as Piggy Trump said it. Awful, right? And they posted a video showcasing beautiful Somalian beaches, as you can see right here. But Lauren quotes it saying, you don't get to come over as refugees seeking asylum from Somalia, then argue that actually Somalia is amazing. It doesn't work like that. Elon said, indeed, it can't be both. Douglas Mackey said, money was funneled straight from the fraud to politicians like Ilhan Omar, Tim Walz, and Amy Klobuchar. Open up a campaign finance investigation immediately. Elon said, yes. And President Trump spoke at the UN.
According to the Council of Europe, in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, the number was 53% of the people in prisons were from places that weren't from where they are now. In Greece, the number was 54%, and in Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland, 72% of the people in prisons are from outside of Switzerland. When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid kindness, and that's what they did. They repaid kindness with crime. It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now.
Elon said major problem. And Elon said that California made healthcare free for illegals, but the average citizen in California suffers as a result. The tax burden for healthcare for illegals was supposed to be $3 billion. I think they now estimate it's $9 billion, but that number will scale to infinity basically. It's like, why not? And Elon reposted that. The Rabbit Hole says, Hillary Clinton said you can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you. Support voter ID so Republicans stop stealing elections. Of course, this is an old clip of Hillary, and Elon reposted it today. And he says, we were told by Democrats and leftists that the January 5th, 2021 pipe bomb suspect was a white supremacist MAGA, but he posts a photo of a black man. Elon said, that's really the guy? And he said, yeah. And actor Richard Gere said, do you really think these refugees and immigrants are different than us? Daily Roman Update said, he put a gerbil in his asshole. And Elon had a laugh at that one. And Libs of TikTok said nearly 4 million non-citizens received a social security number during the Biden administration with virtually zero vetting. 4 million. Ted Cruz said, wow. Elon said, indeed. And holy shit, Trump's national security strategy questions Europe's future as reliable allies. Their economic decline is eclipsed only by the real and stark prospect of civilizational erasure. If present trends continue, the continent will be unrecognizable in 20 years. And Stephen Moore says massive Obamacare fraud uncovered. In 2023, 1 in 3 subsidy recipients, $21 billion total, used social security numbers that didn't match IRS records. Fake applicants in 2024-2025, most were approved, and yet Congress wants to expand subsidies with no limits or safeguards. Peter said impossible. CNN told me illegals don't get Obamacare, and Elon reposted that. Railfan said, one thing about the Ellis Island immigration that people fail to realize is that none of these migrants could get welfare. If they couldn't support themselves, they ended up going back to Europe, whereas Hart-Celler migrants are actively propped up by never-ending welfare. Elon said, exactly. And C3 says, Barack Obama was the first president in 100 years to stay in Washington, D.C. after his term was up. Now, why do you think that was? Elon says, And Matt Gaetz says, here is the chief of staff at the Pentagon reacting to the news that less than 40% of our $100 million F-35s are fully mission capable. I happen to think that if something costs $100 million, it should definitely work more than 40% of the time.
I do want to talk about some of the legacy platforms that I've long been a critic of. I'll start with the F-35. They cost about $100 million a copy. What percentage of the F-35 are fully mission capable today?
So that's a great question, Matt, and I appreciate you getting after it, because not enough. Not enough. It is the most capable fighter that we have right now.
When it flies.
When it flies, you're right. It is the most capable fighter. What we have right now, and you saw just last month in the acquisition speech, is a department and leadership that's willing to get after it, to challenge industry to produce better.
Yeah, but what percentage of them can fly?
So not enough. Not enough.
So but you just called it our most capable platform, and less than 40% of them, by my last review of the Air Force's statements, are fully mission capable. Why is it not failure for a platform to perform at less than 40% when it costs $100 million?
So Matt, looking at it holistically, sure, you can throw out the number 40%. But when you look at Operation Midnight Hammer, Operation Rough Rider,
those weren't F-35 was not delivering the payload on Midnight Hammer.
But they were supporting, right? And so those B-2s wouldn't have gotten there without that. The airplane.
What would have stopped them?
There are plenty of surface-to-air missile systems that the Iranians have. We know that. We know.
Did they shoot any of them?
No, they didn't, because we were so successful, and that platform, the F-35.
Elon said, brutal. And today, Netflix announced their acquisition of Warner Brothers. They said, together, we'll define the next century of storytelling, creating an extraordinary entertainment offering for audiences everywhere. The traditional Rebellion replied saying, massive blockbuster incoming. It's Rapunzel with a bald black chick. And Elon has a laugh at that one. And Paramount is now reportedly looking to launch a hostile bid for Warner Brothers. Elon has his popcorn out. And we saw this post yesterday, doctors admitting to performing non-standard gender-affirming surgeries on youth, including castrations, and Riley Gaines quoted it. She said this is a direct violation of the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm isn't optional. Licenses should be stripped and all responsible should be sued into oblivion. Elon said 100. And the rabbit hole posted, why waking up early is rooted in white supremacy. And someone set their alarm for hate crime AM. And Elon had a laugh at that one. And the rabbit hole also posted a quote from Elon saying the point of fighting racism and sexism was to get rid of racism and get rid of sexism, not to change it to another form. As you look at medical school acceptance rate differentials, with white and Asian people having a hard time getting accepted, Elon said yes. And Elon posted a 6-minute Joe Rogan clip, so let's just look at what Camus had to say about it. He said, Elon just told a story on Rogan that stopped me in my tracks. A close friend in California had police sent to his house to take away his 14-year-old daughter because the school and state were allegedly pushing irreversible medical transition without his consent as the father. He talked the officers down, packed that same night, and flew to Texas. 1 year later, in a normal school environment in the Austin area, his daughter no longer wanted to transition. She was back to being herself. Elon said, the studies I've seen show the suicide risk doesn't drop after medical transition in kids. It triples. And many people don't know there are deaths on the operating table from these procedures that almost never get reported. Both he and Rogan highlighted the explosion of cases in tight friend groups, the growing voices from gay and lesbian adults saying, this is not the same as being gay, and why the phrase, better a live daughter than a dead son, is not backed by the data we actually have. This whole thing has been a nightmare fever dream, Elon said. Thank God people are finally waking up. 6 minutes that feel like they could change everything. Watch and decide for yourself. And Sadie said the word retard is not meant for people with handicaps. It's meant for non-handicapped people who are stupid. If you don't understand this, you're a retard. Elon said exactly. And the OpenAI Foundation names the first People First AI Fund recipients, 208 community-based nonprofits receiving $40 million in unrestricted grants. Katie Miller said OpenAI is a woke company. Their recent donations are all to DEI and transgender organizations. They have recently donated money to the Transgender District Company, the first legally recognized transgender district in the world. They also donated to the Source LGBT Center in Visalia, California, which holds space for trans and non-binary individuals. Elon said very, as in very woke. And over in the UK, Ed Sheeran is asked where are the most dangerous places in London now.
What's the most dangerous place to be around here?
Here, I'd say every area of London, literally every area is sketchy.
I love that.
It's not like a segregated city. There's like, it's very...
Everybody's scared.
No, I mean, the nice areas are sketchy. The bad areas are sketchy. You just have to not do stupid shit.
And Elon reposted that. And Samantha Smith did a podcast about the grooming gangs with Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson's daughter, and Elon reposted it. They said that Elon seems to be the only person who has made mainstream politicians aware of what's going on. Samantha Smith said, I was 5 when my abuse started, and I was groomed and abused by a series of men until I was nearly 16. I remember being asked by a detective from Operation Chalice team whether I had consented to sex, and told by a social worker that my actions had led me to where I was today. I was 5. I was the victim. It was never my fault. And Samantha Smith has a lot more to say, and again, it's an hour-long podcast. I'll put the link in the description for you guys. But Elon replied saying, 5. And Open Justice UK is today releasing the second tranche of sentencing remarks, 4 from Kirklees. Elon said, terrible. And viewer discretion is advised. The victim was taken to London because her rapist owed people here. He dragged her to a house in London and forced her to be gang raped to pay off his debt. The rapists were in a house in London, yet our mayor still denies anything like this ever happened. Absolutely disgusting. Shame on him. We need an independent investigation now. Elon said horrific. And some of the migrants in London said, we're here to f*** all the white girls and f*** the government. We're over here to breed. We are going to take over. When someone tells you who they really are, believe them. Carl Benjamin said, take them seriously when they tell you this. As person B saw that as a joke when it was said. Elon said, wow. Drew said the Rotherham grooming gang sentencing remarks reveal that a judge deliberately tried to downplay the severity of the crime so as to hand down lower prison time to the offenders. One of the girls tortured and abused by the Rotherham grooming gangs was abused from age 12 to 14. The judge decided to sentence the abusers on the basis that she was 13, purely so as to give them a lesser punishment. If she were younger, you would fall within a different sentencing regime that would be perhaps more extreme. And Elon reposted that. And Tommy Robinson says a serial rapist has been charged with kidnapping and sexually assaulting a woman over several days in a hotel room. This comes just months after being let off with no prison time for 2 other attacks, including the rape of a 15-year-old girl at gunpoint. And the man was only free because of the astonishing plea deal he was given in May in progressive Hennepin County, Minnesota. It's becoming every day now, just like the UK. Get them out. Elon said, terrible. Tesla owner Silicon Valley says birth rates are plummeting in a lot of countries. Population collapse is the greatest threat to civilization, and change needs to happen to save humanity. Elon said an immediate increase in the birth rate is needed. And X is now the #1 news app in Canada. Elon said, cool. It's also the #1 news app in South Korea. Elon said again, cool. Robert Scoble said the vibes are shifting here on X. Been talking to some on the inside of XAI. The new fully completed algorithm is still a few weeks off. It will be run by a new Grok, and the report below makes me excited about the future. Elon said it is often 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we are making rapid progress in showing people compelling content. It's too much in flux right now, but hopefully by next month, we should be able to open source literally all of the X codebase. Nothing left out at all. And Steven Crowder asked Nick Fuentes, do you hate all Jews? Nick said no. Crowder said, do you consider yourself an anti-Semite? Nick said no. Do you believe white people are superior? Nick said no. Nick also says he isn't a Fed and that it appears Tyler Robinson murdered Charlie Kirk. Drew said, thank God. I was starting to worry that Nick Fuentes might be anti-Semitic. Elon said he's a Fed. Drew said a large section of Nick Fuentes' audience just comes from the Middle East and Pakistan. Elon said, yup. And Naval said the secret to investing is to invest in unstoppable people building inevitable things. And Elon reposted that. And we got 4 Grok Imagine repostings today from Elon. This is when his mom was 20 years old. And there's some Santa and reindeer. And here's a woman on a bike that Elon posted. So that's everything that Elon said today. Can you guys think back to watching that Neuralink injection? That was a long time ago now, but that looked extremely precise, extremely intricate, extremely complicated, and extremely cool. We saw that the EU is fining X, and Elon doesn't just want to respond to the EU, he wants to respond to the exact people within the EU, the individuals who were setting all of that up, as they are also coming after the individual Elon, not just X. It also sounds like the Somali fraud in Minnesota might be at a larger scale than originally thought. And I'll put the link below to Michaela Peterson talking to that victim of the Rotherham grooming gangs. And as always, if you guys want early access to these videos or you just want to support this channel, you can do so by joining this channel as a member. Thank you to all who have been supporting throughout the year. Please drop a question below if you guys want me to answer it on a Q&A over the holidays, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.